Welcome to Season 2 of the SOAR podcast, the place for creative entrepreneurs who want to build healthier, happier, more profitable self-employed businesses. I'm your host, Raewyn Guerrero, business mentor at Chiron Consulting and CEO and senior copywriter at Cornell Content Marketing. Get ready to soar. All right, welcome to the SOAR podcast. Today we have Raewyn Guerrero. And please correct me if I'm mispronouncing your name because I tend to trip over my syllables there. Raewyn, tell us all about you and your business.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here because I do feel like I am on a mission to empower women and help them go from burnout to all out. And the way that I do that is a little bit differently to the way that you might traditionally think about it. Because I think a lot of people think, oh, it's about motivation, it's about mindset. And yeah, totally, that is one element. But there's this whole other biology of burnout that people don't necessarily pay attention to. And I actually do a talk called The Biology of Resilience, because resilience, again, is always thought of as something like, oh, we've got to think our way through a problem. It's like, no, we actually need to feel, we need to tune in, we need to see what's going on with our bodies. We need to pay attention to how we are nourishing it. So I trained as a functional medicine health coach, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. I actually led a well-being program at Barclays for 5 years, but I was there for 10 years working in HR. So I had my firsthand experience with burnout back then, and started my business in 2017 because I realized that the solutions that were being offered to me through the conventional medical route and through traditional therapy, they weren't enough, and they were not connecting dots. And I feel like that's something that's my job. My job now is to help people become aware, like get into that aware phase of like, actually, this symptom isn't just about, let's say my headache is not just a headache, like there's something else going on. There's something, and there's that whole gut brain connection. So I've adopted the moniker Gutsy Executive Coach because I work with women in business who are executives, and I do that whole connection between the gut and the brain and do the investigative work into that, amongst other things, but primarily starting with the gut, because Hippocrates actually said all disease begins in the gut. And I've seen like 99% of the time that's actually true. A lot of our hormones are converted in there. We have got most of our neurotransmitters are converted in there and created in there. So 80% of your serotonin, which is your happy neurotransmitter, is produced in the GI tract. You've got GABA, your relaxation one, the one that alcohol mimics, is actually produced in your GI tract. So I spend a lot of time working with people on, yes, their mindset, but also looking at, well, how can we help you dress for success? And dress is diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplements. So as much as possible to avoid medication because of the side effects that can come along with that. And that's a big part of my origin story, because I'd seen my grandfather, he was stuck on anti-anxiety meds for 20 years, and it led to some pretty debilitating side effects. So my whole work has been inspired and driven by how do we help people get off of these things. And then, of course, my own story, personal story of how I crashed and burned in my late 30s and realizing like, whoa, I'm never going to be able to have kids. I'm never, like, all these things, my hormones were so out of whack. My skin was a mess. I just had no energy. It used to take me like 2.5 hours to peel myself off of bed. And then I'd have to meditate my way just to be calm enough to get centered enough to get into work, to deal with commuting in through central London, and then getting to a desk where, you felt like you were not being valued. My boss was micromanaging me, and I was working all the hours. I did work it was like 14 hours a day sitting at my desk and eating 3 meals a day at a desk. So that really is not a recipe for health at the end of the day. So when my own health crashed and burned, I had to find another way. And I kept looking and looking, and I tried a lot of traditional things. I tried, gastroenterologists, I tried psychiatrists, psychologists, coaches, Reiki healers, acupuncturists, traditional Chinese medicine. I'm trying to think of what Qigong. Like I've done all this different,
all the things.
all the things. Like I've tried, like I said, all the ologists, like all the traditionals, and then I tried all the alternatives. And then when I came upon functional medicine, which is the study of like these different systems in the body and how they're all connected, so that if you think of a car, you go to get your car looked over, if it's not running, you don't only look at the tires, you're going to look at the engine, you're going to look at the oil, you're going to look at the fuel line, you're going to look at all these different aspects of the car. But for some reason, humans, when they go to a doctor, they're like, oh, I have no energy. The doctor will be like, oh, well, drink more coffee or get more sleep. And they don't necessarily be like, well, why don't you have energy? Like, what's going on there?
Or if you say, I'm really pills, and
exactly, you're not sleeping, here's a
Yep.
sleeping pill. And they're not saying, well, maybe I should look into what her thyroid is doing. And then maybe we should see how often she's going to the bathroom, because that's a lot of women that come to see me don't go to the bathroom regularly. And they're thinking like, oh, well, I go once every 3 days and that's okay. I'm like, no, that's a real sign or symptom. Or they're like, oh, I don't really get a period, or I get a really horrific period and it's awful and it keeps me in bed for 2 days. I'm like, these are signs that your body, these are clues. This is your check engine light on the dashboard, right? You need to pay attention. You don't just turn it off. You need to be like, okay, this is alerting me to the fact that there's a bigger problem. And that's what I loved about functional medicine. It starts putting together all of these pieces and saying, okay, this is starting to give me a clearer picture of the puzzle of your health, because I know this system is linked to that system, rather than the spot or reductionist approach of take this pill to match that symptom. So I don't chase symptoms. I don't diagnose or treat. That's one other thing that's very different about the way that I work. There's no diagnosis involved. If you've gotten a diagnosis from a doctor, great, that's wonderful, but that's not something that I would ever do. And even though I work with a traditional doctor who's also trained in functional medicine, our scope of practice is not to diagnose or treat. We look for healing opportunities. So we look for the weak links and then look at how we can strengthen. Yeah, exactly. And we look at, well, how can we strengthen these weak links? Because if we sat there picking apart symptom by symptom, we never get anywhere. We look at, okay, well, the labs are showing us that these things in your body aren't working. So we're going to start helping them work again, because we know that there's usually a system involved or a strategy involved in helping them work. So we focus on, well, how do we get them functioning again? How do we switch on that innate wisdom of the body? Because ultimately your cells, they're doing all the jobs for you without you having to tell them what to do. Yeah, so this amazing, again, right? To me is the amazing part of it. Like your body is designed to keep you alive. And I meet a lot of people with health anxiety. Like I've had one lady who was, every time she had like a palpitation, she's like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And she'd call an ambulance. I had to do some hypnosis work on her to help her to understand, like, actually your body's working for you. It's telling you if you're getting a palpitation, that means something else is off and we need to do some work and investigate what's going on. And of course, we did. And we found, like, she had been exposed to mold, had mold illness. And then that was leading to a slow thyroid. And then that was leading to these gut symptoms. And she wasn't going to the bathroom regularly enough or detoxifying regularly enough. And then that was leading to the brain fog and the headaches and the anxiety.
Oh my God. It's such a
exactly. So I do feel like a detective more than, a health detective, as opposed to, I'm not a prescriber. I'm not a diagnoser. I'm just a detective, and I'm putting together clues, and then I'm going to help you rebuild yourself.
Well, and I love that you take this like anti-diagnosis perspective, because I feel like so often people accept a diagnosis and then it's like they are accepting that problem as just something that they have to live with. And instead, you are saying, no, every single person is unique. Two people could have the exact same symptoms, but they may have completely different problems. And so you're not putting that label on it, and you are very solutions focused as opposed to problem focused, which I feel like diagnoses
most medicine is about,
very problem focused. And the other thing I found really interesting is that you brought up this car analogy, because at the very beginning we were talking about, everything originates in the gut. I'm thinking, that makes sense. If I put shitty gas into my car, well, of course, it's going to gum up the spark plug. It's going to gum up this system and this mechanism and all of these things. And then, of course, I'm going to have mechanical problems. And so if our gut is the receptacle to receive the fuel that we're putting into our bodies, and particularly for entrepreneurs, our listeners, our freelancer listeners who are in these very fast-paced, self-driven, high pressure that they're putting on themselves sorts of situations, they may not be fueling their bodies the way that they need to. And so naturally, that is going to cause a ripple effect through your body.
And your life, like, it's debilitating. I had one lady, great, things obviously very different for her now, but at the time when she first came to see me, she had horrible rosacea, eczema, her skin was a mess, and she couldn't eat after 5 p.m. She said if she had anything to eat or drink after 5, she'd just have reflux all night. So she hadn't been on a date for like a decade. She would not go out on a dinner date. So her love life had like flatlined. She wasn't able to, because she's like, I can't go out if I can't eat because I'm just going to be upset and nauseous all night. And then within 6 weeks of us doing the diagnostics, getting her on the program, she actually forgot to take her supplements because she'd gone on a vacation 6 weeks in, and she forgot, and she was out with friends and family that she hadn't seen in a long time. She drank 2 bottles of Prosecco. Not that I recommend this at all. I do not tell people, forget your supplements and go have a ball. But she had 2 bottles of Prosecco after 8 p.m., having dinner late. And she said, oh my God, this is the first time in like 10 years I was able to drink and eat and not be sick like all night. Like I had like the best time on this trip. We did it a few nights. She said, obviously the second I got back, I went back on my supplements, but I think within 6 weeks, my gut started to turn around. I said, yeah, that's usually within 2 weeks, you should start to see and feel a difference. But I do put people through 90 days because that's how long, like even if you start to feel better immediately, even because you might be removing a trigger food or something, you might feel better immediately, but it does take a while for your body to heal properly. Yes. So you can remove the triggers, and which is a lot, a lot of people come to me at that point. They're like, well, I'm already on like a low FODMAP diet. I'm on this diet. I'm on that diet. I'm like, yes, but we still haven't really figured out what's causing all these symptoms anyway. So like, that's why the labs are great. Otherwise you're literally stuck in a cycle of trial and error, just going round and round. Like, I'm going to try and remove this food. I'm going to try this supplement. And people show up with supplement graveyards. They're like, well, I've tried all these things, but none of them have worked. And they say, I've tried everything. And I'm like, you haven't really, because you've been doing it in a really sort of random, non-strategic way. And what I love to do is to help them find the structure and go through different phases. And then, gradually wean back in certain foods after we've done the work on healing and repairing the gut, amongst other things.
I'm guilty of that too. I'm like, okay, so I need to figure this out, and I need to figure this out, and I need to figure this out. And so I'm just gonna, I heard about this thing. I heard about fasting. I'm gonna try that. Oh, I heard about this diet. I'm gonna try that. And you're right. It's just totally random because we are literally grasping at straws. We're not putting building blocks in place to build ourselves a roadmap to that healthy gut. And, one of the things that I learned from reading your chapter in our book, Corporate Dropouts, was that even though you eat a vegetarian diet, you are not pushing vegetarianism on everyone. And
well, I did. I don't do it anymore because I got really sick eating it.
Exactly. And so you are not one of those health coaches who say, oh, you have to eat vegan and you have to do this and you have to do this. It's veganism works for some people. Maybe the carnivore diet works for other people. Maybe an eclectic diet works for other people. Maybe low carb works for other people. And that's your true focus, is helping people figure out what works for them. You're not trying to push one agenda on everyone.
Exactly. No, I'm actually really personalizing what works for them. And there's, in addition to obviously the elimination side of things, which you kind of get from, if you do lab work and you see like, okay, you have food sensitivities to this, this, and this, or you have got this level of gut bacteria and they react to sugary, starchy foods. So we need to remove those from your diet too. Yeah. There's also something that we do called metabolic typing. And we figure out, like, from an ancestral point of view, like what sorts of foods you're meant to be eating for your biology, for your individual biology. So like my husband, for example, his roots are Northern European. He does really well on like a lot of fat and protein. I am from the Southern Caribbean, corn and potatoes and those things are great for me. They don't make me ill, but like him, he'd like fall asleep within like 10 minutes if he had the level of carbs that I would eat. And the same for me. Like if I eat the level of fat that he eats, I'd blow up, like, I'd just get so big. So I help people understand, well, what's your metabolic type? And there's a whole, we test hair and all that stuff as well. And then we also do like a questionnaire, and you start to pay attention, like, do I feel energized after I eat this, or does it make me tired? And when I say after, like within 4 hours, like not like in half an hour. If within the first 2 hours, something's making you fall asleep, or you start to get itchy, or you have a headache, or you're feeling weird, like that's a sign, like, okay, I am sensitive to whatever it is I've just put in. I might need to remove that. And when you remove it, the idea is that, you're going to remove it while you also figure out, like, why are you sensitive to it? Like what's causing the sensitivity? So that's where the other lab work comes in. So we could figure that out, because sensitivities you can heal from. And many people have this misconception that a sensitivity is an allergy, but a true allergy is something that you are born with, whereas a sensitivity you have acquired. right? So people say, oh, I'm allergic to this, I'm allergic to that. I'm like, you're probably not. Like, did you grow up being allergic to that? I'm like, no, I wasn't allergic. I was like, then you're not allergic. Like, you've got a sensitivity, usually down to a damaged gut, which is usually down to alcohol, too much sugar, over-the-counter meds, prescription meds. They can cause a lot of damage to your intestinal lining, particularly psychopharmaceuticals, which I know no one ever wants to hear. Psychopharmaceuticals can actually really destroy your gut lining, and antibiotics, which was my story. I had been on numerous courses of antibiotics throughout my life and did not connect the dots until I was in my mid-30s. That's why my immunity was off. Like, I was sick all the time. I had no energy. I was always bloating after eating. I think when they did my first gut health test with a nutritionist, he said, you have like 0 lactobacillus. He's like, I've never seen this before. He's like, you have no good bacteria, like 0.
Wow.
So, and I thought, what? I was like, is that possible? He said, well, I'm just stunned that you're like, he's like, no wonder you're sick all the time. Because like 90% of your immune system's in your gut, which, you know, you don't learn that from traditional doctors either, right?
Right.
So a lot of your energy is going to come from what's going on here. Like you said, the car analogy makes sense to you. If you're putting in crappy gas, you're going to get crappy outputs. And for me, trying to get people to connect those dots and getting them to understand, like, you don't go and DIY your car, you take it to a specialist, right? So please stop trying all the random things and ending up with a supplement graveyard. Like, sit down, work with someone who will guide you through a program, rather than like, I'm going to see you for one appointment and I'm going to be fixed. I'm like, you don't go to the gym and see your personal trainer for one appointment and then all of a sudden you've got abs. This is not how it works. You know, you've got to be consistent. They build you up to a certain point before you can go off on your own and train by yourself. But you usually go through either a 6-week or a 12-week program, and it's the exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And you're saying so many things that I feel like so many entrepreneurs, those of us who work for ourselves, we build our own businesses, we have big ambitions, big dreams, big goals, we push ourselves really hard. We can relate to that. And I want to get more into the burnout piece. We're going to take a really short break to drop some resources for our listeners, and we'll be right back.
Hey, this is Ray. When I started my freelance career way back in 2007, I wish I had access to a library of lessons I could go to whenever I hit one of those oh shit moments in my business. Now, after building 2 businesses of my own and helping hundreds of business owners create healthier, happier, more profitable businesses, I've created that library of burnout blocking tools that I wish I had back in the day. The Chiron Academy is your training ground to hone your skills and strengthen your business one area at a time. Inside, you'll get access to all of my courses, workshops, and business building events for one low monthly price. Rather than buying each workshop for $47 and each course for $297 or more, you get access to everything for just $47 a month. You can take all the workshops you want whenever you want, and with each one, you'll see your business leap forward. Save time, save money, save yourself the stress, and soar. I'll see you inside the Chiron Academy. Learn more at chironconsulting.us/academy.
And we're back. Okay, so Raewyn, talk to me about this concept that you created from burnout to all out. What is this sort of like connection between gut health and burnout that you've noticed with the female entrepreneurs that you work with?
Well, I think the number one thing that I've seen is that they fail, like I was saying at the start, like they really kind of fail to see that what they're eating or how they're living, the sort of like the pace at which they're living is what's leading them into no energy, not sleeping well, hormones not being great. So, which is why I like starting off with investigative work. I'm like, the first thing we're going to do, even though it's not diagnosing, but it is like identifying what are the hidden stressors, right? So you look at hormones, you look at the immune system, you look at digestion, detoxification, energy production, and the nervous system. So hidden is an acronym. So that's what we look at. We identify the hidden stressors. And once we do that, then we can create this personalized plan, like you said, this roadmap that takes them from this place where they are potentially flatlining or flatlined already, or just on the verge of it, the exhaustive phase, and getting them to, where they're experiencing frequent colds and flus, lots of weird, sometimes bizarre things, like lots of mouth ulcers. Like sometimes people say, I'm getting all these mouth ulcers. I'm like, yeah, it's a B vitamin deficiency. We need to look into why you're not absorbing. Are you taking B vitamins? Are you eating enough meat? Usually a lot of vegans show up like that. They show up with a lot of allergies and a lot of issues with ulcers and those sorts of things. Again, stuff that you wouldn't necessarily connect, but I start to piece together all the clues, and I start seeing these different patterns that begin to emerge from certain people and how they eat a certain way, and they're not getting enough of what they need in order for them to function or thrive in life. So, and thriving can also be lots of different things. And that's why I love the fact that I can integrate the CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy, and the hypnosis piece into this as well. Because I feel like what happens at the start is that we spend a lot of time focusing on food, focusing on supplements, and very quickly we can shift past that. Usually by sort of like the midpoint, by the third or fourth session, we can shift past that and then start getting into hopes and dreams, and how well are you nurturing yourself and your spirit? Are you spending time really doing what you love? Or are you doing things to please other people or for approval? And we kind of dig into the why behind the way people are working. Because when you're working, and yes, you might be an entrepreneur and you might have a real mission, but if you're working in a way that's not sustainable, there's usually something, a big sort of either imposter syndrome driving that. There's a ton of stuff that's going on underneath the surface that needs to be dealt with and explored and investigated. It could be even a trauma, something that has happened early on in life that needs to be identified too. And I have seen that a lot, believe it or not, with my clients. Like, they don't start off coming to me saying, oh, I have been the victim of abuse or whatever. That never comes out at first, but usually by that halfway point, once we've kind of nailed the food down and we've nailed the supplements and they know what they got to do for the next 12 weeks or whatever, we get into like, well, what are some of the motivators for you? And like, why are you pushing so hard? And why is this so important? And there's usually some unresolved trauma, or they've tried to resolve it through therapy, but it hasn't, the thing about therapy, having been through it and also being a psychotherapist, which is why I prefer coaching. I feel like you always spend so much time just revisiting a wound and just reopening it and picking at it, and then you come out and you're just exactly
just dwelling and ruminating. Yeah,
exactly. You're wallowing and in victim mode, and I really think it's important for people to move from that and start creating the vision of what they want. And all my programs begin with, well, okay, you've told me how you're currently feeling. How do you want to feel? And we do a lot of visioning work to begin with. I make them write things down, and then I go back and then I create like their own personalized self-hypnotic track so they can use that while they're going through this process and coming back to like seeing themselves healthy, full of energy, balanced, having time and space to do more of what they love and less time being trapped at a desk or, so there's that whole mindset piece that comes in, but also like the creating the future. What is the future going to look like for you? And some people, they're like, I've been sick for so long. I've been so tired. I don't even know what that would look like.
Yeah. They don't even know what's possible.
Yeah, they don't. So we sit down and we do a lot of that work in our sessions where we figure out, well, what would it look like? What would ideal look like for you if you've never even thought about it before, if you've never had the space or the bandwidth? And, it looks different for everybody. But one thing that does come up a lot is freedom, and I talk about that in my chapter in the book. Like, becoming an entrepreneur for me was about freedom. Like, I had freedom to travel. So geographical freedom. I had freedom in my body where I didn't have to worry about, oh my God, can I eat that on the menu? Can I eat that on the menu? Is it going to make me sick? Like, all of that stuff just goes out the window. Freedom to, what else? You got geographical freedom, time freedom, most important thing. Body freedom, geographical freedom, time freedom, getting that time and creative freedom, having time to like, wait, do I want to paddleboard on a Thursday morning at 8 a.m.? Yes, I do. Or do I want to kayak, or do I want to go in my garden? Do I want to grow my own food? Like all these things that people are just like, I didn't even thought about that. And the way that the world is going now, I really am rallying my little group. Like, I have sort of like 15 active clients right now. I don't take on more than that. 15 active, and we meet group wise, but we also do one-to-one. So the 12 weeks is like we meet, and then we have my one-to-ones, and then we also meet as a group, which is amazing, that's actually probably the thing that I love the most, because when we get together, they're so incredible how they support each other. And that just takes on a life and energy of its own. And everyone's realizing like, well, we need to figure out multiple income streams. We need to figure out how to be self-sufficient in the event that the shit hits the fan. I don't know if I can say that on your
yes.
show.
Oh,
yeah, I can say the shit hits the fan.
I curse like a sailor here. Don't worry.
Just making sure, like, if the shit hits the fan, you got to make sure you can feed yourself. You've got, fuel. And I'm not a survivalist, but I'm just paying attention to the world and the way things are headed. And, you know, we're in Mexico and there's a place out here, if anybody ever gets a chance to visit Cabo, go to a place called Flora Farms. And that's like my dream. That's what I'm working toward, like recreating my own little Flora Farms where they've got their own well and they've got their solar and they've got their own food and they've got their animals and, you know, pigs and chickens and everything that, you know, they can feed themselves and you don't have to, and they can live off grid. And I'm not saying everybody wants to do that because I need a Wi-Fi connection in order to be able to work. But
Me too, I'm with you.
Of course, but at the same time, you have to think, well, you know, in a couple of years, things might become different or scarce. And this little group of mine, like we're all looking at, well, how do we create different income streams and how do we create sustainability in our lives as well? And how do we help other people along the way, which is the big driving force, because the more people that we have waking up to living and thinking and feeling this way about the world and realizing like, look, the only way we're going to get through half of this is in community rather than in competition.
Yeah.
So
and working together. Exactly.
Community collaboration, pulling together. And like I said, I love that group, like my well-connected group. They are incredible. I love seeing them one-to-one, but there is something magical that definitely happens when we all get together.
So let me ask you a question that I might not like the answer to. And so if you know anything about human design, I'm a generator and I tend to attract a lot of generators, a lot of manifesting generators. And
guilty.
Yes, we are people who can just go. And so I'm a little bit of a peak performance junkie. You know, I read all the things, I listen to all the podcasts, I do all the programs, all the trainings, and going to a Joe Dispenza workshop soon. You know, it's like all of these things that are like meant to take you to that next level of your performance. So my question to you is, for those of us who want that busy lifestyle where we're just creating things left and right and building, and, you know, my husband and I are working on a chicken coop and we've got our raised garden beds and all the things. It's like, is it possible with what you know about gut health and all of the mindset work and all the psychological work that you do, is it possible to get to that place of true peak performance?
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I'm saying. The only way to get to that place is this way, is by being tuned in, because otherwise you'll get there, but you won't last. Right?
Exactly. And that's burnout, right?
And that's burnout. Exactly. You push yourself to beyond your limits, beyond your physical limits, which I think we all often forget that we are, you know, we need food, water, air, you know, clean food, clean. Yeah. So you forget these things because we think we're like a machine and I can just keep going. And like, you're not. Like if you do, and there's an expression, if you do not make time for wellness, you will be forced to make time for illness. So you might not want it. You're like, I don't have time to focus on cooking. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time. And there are other ways. Like I help people in my VIP program. I help them find meal delivery services. So like if you don't have time to cook, we'll find you a service that will bring you the food that will be of the quality that it needs to be in order to sustain you. Right. So there are ways, like I help people figure these things out. If they say, I'm really busy, I really don't have time to sit down and cook all of this stuff or chop up vegetables or whatever, we will come up with a strategy. We'll find a plan. We'll find what's in your local neighborhood and make sure that you are able to fuel your performance properly. But fueling it also means taking your foot off the gas. And that's the thing that, you know, back to car analogies, Formula One, if you think about what happens on a racetrack, right? If they don't make pit stops, what happens to them? Right, their tires burn out. Tires burn out. They flip over. They run out of gas. You know,
they get rear-ended. Collision.
Yeah, exactly. You have to make pit stops. That's the only way that you keep performing at a high level. Because if you don't, when you're meant to, when you should, when you pay it like sleeping, sleeping is technically a pit stop, right? Like you need to get good quality sleep. You skimp on that, your immunity goes down, your hormones go out of whack, your metabolism goes out of whack, your inflammation levels go up, you're at risk for heart disease, your risk for all these things increases exponentially, diabetes, all that, blood sugar. So, and I used to wear a blood sugar monitor. I'm not doing it here now because I'm in Mexico and I can't get it here. But when I was in San Diego, I used to wear this blood sugar monitor, and really weirdly, and I talk about this I have a 5-day course called Get Gutsy. It's a Get Gutsy Reset, and it's free. Anybody can take it. And it's a way to kind of introduce them to some of these concepts and start making small, gradual changes. But I talk about the blood sugar monitor being the thing that I was wearing it for food to see like, well, what foods are spiking my blood sugar? And the thing that was really interesting about it, it wasn't food for me. Yeah, because I eat paleo-ish, you know, But when there were a few nights where I had to do some presentations in the UK, and I was waking up really early at like 3 a.m. because I had to do it at lunchtime their time, which was like 4 a.m. My sleep was, I was going to bed at 10, waking up at 3, not ideal. Don't recommend it. And my blood sugar was spiking on those days, even though nothing about my food had changed. But the fact that I wasn't sleeping, I was like in this really dangerous sort of like, it's just massive, massive peaks in my blood sugar. So sleep is so huge as a regulator and as a pit stop. If you want to recover well, it's like, you go to the gym and it's the same thing. Like if you are exercising loads and you start lifting and lifting and lifting, but you don't give yourself days in between or weeks in between to recover, and you don't build gradually, what's going to happen? You're going to tear a muscle. You're going to get broken down. So the recovery,
you can't go to the gym for 2, 3, 4 weeks.
Exactly. So resilience is literally about like actually pulling back. It's about pulling back. So, and being able to realize, like, in order to be at peak performance and running from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, I've got to have a minute to pause. And I have to remind myself of that too, because I am a manifesting generator. So, in my business, like I have been sitting, I can sit here and go at it for 15 hours. And I'm like, how has that served me in the past? Very well. Right. And how is it? And I see it happen over and over. How is it serving all the other people who are showing up? Like my brain's fried. I can't hold a thought. I can't remember anything. I have no energy. I'm like, okay, so clearly the way that you're living, you've lived yourself into the state. Like we've got to live your way out of it now. So boundaries, breaks, breath work, the 3 B's.
And you touch on another really important factor, especially for self-employed business owners, which is the stress piece. And I feel like even if you optimize your health, you optimize your gut health, you optimize your sleep routines, you get all of these ducks in a row, there's still always going to be that battle against stress. And for those of us who are corporate dropouts and who left that crazy corporate world because of the stress, only to come home to our home offices and exchange our 9 to 5 for a 24/7, that is even more responsibility on our shoulders. We're not just filling this one role in a company, but we are filling all the roles, wearing all the hats in our own businesses. Stress is a natural part of being an entrepreneur. And yet you and I are on a mission to remove that stress from people's lives and to, it sounds like you really work with ways to build that resiliency against stress. And so what are some patterns, or what are your best tips for people who feel like they figured it out, but stress, the constant presence of stress in their lives, no matter how many, adaptogens and mushrooms and things that they're taking, that is always a constant pressure in their lives? What would you recommend they do?
Well, I think it's important for us to identify that there are 3 types of stress. So you have got, in fact, actually there are 5, but we're going to, for purposes of time today, we're going to talk about 3. So you've got your emotional stress. So I think that's what you're talking about, situations and things that can drive cortisol, and cortisol stress is the elevation of cortisol, right? Which is a hormone. And then that causes blood sugar to elevate as well. So those are 2 intrinsically linked things, and it causes melatonin to drop, when melatonin is your sleep hormone. So we've got like emotional stress, and we've got like biochemical stress, which I was just talking about, and they all play off each other. And then you've got like a physiological, musculoskeletal stress, so like an injury. And again, the emotional stress can create a musculoskeletal stress, and the musculoskeletal stress can create an emotional stress. And then that can create the biochemical stress. So they're all intertwined. So if you've got just one and you say, oh, I'm just dealing with psychological stress, I'm just dealing with, a shitty work situation, or maybe it's not a shitty one. Maybe even it's like a good thing. Cause sometimes even like getting married, which is a lovely thing, or having a baby, wonderful things. They're stressful. Yes. Very stressful, right? Because you're losing sleep. You are not, your cortisol is going up, and then your adaptive reserves begin to drop. So what you want to do when you think about like, okay, if I'm dealing with stressful situations, how do I manage those? So yes, you can take adaptogens for sure, but you need to also, I keep going back to like, find out if there's anything else going on, because the way that you perceive stress and the way that I perceive stress might be totally different for you. Like, my stepson, he jumps out of a plane and he thinks like it's the greatest thing on earth. For me, I'm having a heart attack. I'm like, this is not what humans are supposed to do. We do not fly. If we were meant to fly, we'd have wings. So we do not jump out of planes. So perception of stress is also another key feature in how we deal with psychological stress. And then the length of time that you're dealing with your stress is also another big feature. So if you're living in a constant state of stress, then you're no longer adaptive. You're in chronic stress. So when we go through short, sharp bursts of stress, that's when it's, that's healthy. That's actually good for us. It helps us grow. It's the same thing. I go back to muscle. So cars and muscles, those are my two analogies. So go back to muscle growth. You have to stress out a muscle a little bit in order for it to grow. So then in some ways, that's not a bad thing. But if it's constantly under pressure, constantly under stress, then what happens is that you end up having a tear or some sort of injury. And it's the same thing with our brains. So that's why I keep going back to saying things like the 3 Bs. Look at where can you figure out to build in your breaks, right? Your boundaries and breath work. The 3 Bs are so crucial from a mindset and behavioral point of view in order for managing yourself. And then also looking at things like blood sugar. So your 4th B, right? So you're managing your blood sugar is also another key feature of that. And some people think I mean, oh, I've got to eat all the time in order to manage my blood sugar. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. You can actually manage blood sugar. You mentioned intermittent fasting a little while ago. One of the ways that I sorted mine out, because at one point, this is while I was in Barclays, I was a grazer. I'm like, there's always stuff on my desk. There's nuts and seeds and yogurt and all these things in addition to meals. And I was constantly but I never gave my digestive tract a break. So I'm like, why am I bloated all the time? Why am I in pain? Like genius. Like all you're doing is putting extra stress and extra load. And you kind of sometimes need to, and I would wake up extremely hungry. And I'm like, oh, it's because my metabolism's firing. I was like, no, actually, it's because my blood sugar had dropped completely because it was so accustomed to being fed. And, so in the way to balance it for me, I'm not saying this is everybody, was that I started intermittent fasting and I went on a retreat and they showed me how to do it. And it was in a very safe container being monitored by other people. So again, I did not go and just try this by myself. Like I made sure I was supervised so that when I started having I'm getting a little lightheaded and they were like, okay, what did we give you today to eat? Like when was your last meal? Those sorts of things. And like, okay, maybe this is, and at one point they were giving me lentils, which was no good for me. I'm like, that is not working out at all. So lentils did not work. The whole vegetarian thing really didn't work for me. But the intermittent fasting, going sort of like eating within only an 8-hour window for me worked really, really well. And it helped me manage that blood sugar. And I did not wake up like an angry bear, like, where's my food? Where's my coffee? All that just kind of, and I mellowed out completely, like really, really mellowed out. So the things that you're putting in will have an impact. The thoughts that you're thinking are going to have an impact, and the behaviors that you're engaging in are going to have an impact, and your perception of the stress as well. So, when you think, oh my God, my business, it's stressing me out. Like, but you get to run a business.
Right. You get to design that.
You get to design, exactly. You get to live your life with intention and by design. How many people on this earth are stuck in doing things that they hate? Like I look back at my parents and, they just had to slog it out. They didn't have options to and if they did, they weren't aware of them. And now you get to be in a place where, no, I can actually sit down and figure out how to make money online. I can figure out I've got the time and the space to do these things. I can do all the courses. I'm very familiar with that. Do all the workshops, all the summits. I'm going to sign up and do all these things because I can clear my schedule and be like, okay, this week I'm not going to see anyone. Or if I do, I'll see them on one day. And then I've got 2 days to do my summit or the 3 days or whatever it is. So you get to rather than you have to. And that's a big mindset shift that people need to come to as well. And that you're like, this is actually a gift. This is a privilege that I have been gifted this time to be an entrepreneur, to manage my day. And maybe if I'm struggling with that, maybe I should seek out a mentor or someone who can help me figure out how to better make use of my day and how to, and that's why I do like things like masterminds, because you're surrounded by other people who, that's another community element where they're either a little bit ahead of you or just behind you or somebody just at the same place of you. Is a place as you, and that's priceless, because then that gives you a sense of not being alone, which humans need. We need to feel connected. And that's probably one of the biggest, I think, struggles for entrepreneurs, that lack of connection, because you probably have done away with some of your older friends because they don't really understand, well, why are you working 15 hours a day and why aren't you coming, like in England, why aren't you coming to the pub? You're like, because coming to the pub is not helping me put food on my table or pay my bills. So I'm solely responsible for the mortgage. I'm solely responsible for whatever it is. Or the children. Exactly. You don't clock out. So just going out every night after work, which, might have been a thing when you were salaried and somebody else was worrying about those things. It just is no longer a feature. So you start to lose a lot of your old circle. And then you're kind of in a transition place of, well, I don't really know who my real people are. Who is my tribe? Who are the people that I can sit down and talk to about the fact that the system I invested in, I'm not really sure it's working, or, you don't necessarily have those sorts of people immediately as you step into this space around you. So it's really important to find some sort of community or connection. If you have a partner who's also an entrepreneur, it makes it so much simpler. So much. Like, with you. Yes. When I branched off within I went to that retreat in March 2017. So it was 5 years ago. I graduated from the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy in June the 6th. And by the 13th of June, I'd broken up with my 4-year boyfriend. Because I just realized we could not, I think I'd seen it all along. And because I'd had coaching through it, they kept asking me well, why do you feel like you're stressed? And everything would always come back down to, well, being with him is actually really stressful. And I'm what am I doing? I have to take on this whole other stress of running a company. I can't look after someone who wants me to look after them. And, he wasn't prepared to pull his weight. So I just couldn't do it. So you have to really examine who's in your circle, who understands you. You need people who understand you. So community and connection, big pieces when it comes to dealing with situational stress, particularly as an entrepreneur, and practicing those 3 or 4 Bs, whatever you want to look at it, blood sugar as part of it.
And it's a natural evolution. When you start fixing the big problems that are right in front of you, that are bothering you every day, and those start to resolve, then you're going to move on to the next layer of issues, the next layer of issues. So you're going to, when you start tackling these bigger problems, like the physical symptoms that you're feeling and that you're just hoping are going to be gone, it starts opening the door for so many other things in your life to change.
Completely.
And Raewyn, you have given us so much to think about. Where can people check you out if they want to work with you, learn more about your work, and get that free course?
Well, I'd love everybody to just go to well-works.co/get-gutsy-reset. It's pretty long, but that's where
the link in the show notes.
You'll put the link in the show. Thank you. It's pretty long, but that's where you'll get the 5-day mini course, and it will get you thinking and taking some actions, some small actions across each of the 5 pillars: the diet, the rest, the exercise, stress reduction, and supplements. So and again, I don't believe in random supplements, but these are some generic sort of this is what you could do if you want to kind of get started on looking at reclaiming energy and preventing burnout. So that's a great place to begin. And then you can also find me on Instagram. So I'm the Gutsy Executive Coach. So it's just Instagram.com/Gutsy Executive Coach. Very simple. Fantastic. And I have a wonderful free community on Facebook, Well Works World. So the idea is that we're creating a well world together. So I would love for people to participate in that, because that's where I go live very frequently. I will share videos. I will come in there, answer questions, ask me anything. So you can pop in there if you have questions, and it's a lot of great energy in there. Lots of cool people. Everybody's dealing with their own thing. Nobody ever gets to, oh, I'm suddenly fixed. And that's one thing I would love to leave people with. Being alive is a journey. It is not a destination. And being healthy is a journey. So even, like I told you, some of my struggles, they don't end because oh, I fixed this. And it's well, no, as I'm getting older, as things are happening, I'm in my mid-40s, stuff starts to change. I've got to be adapting, and that's why it's really important. If you look at a tennis star or a professional athlete, they don't go through life with just a life coach or just a tennis coach. They have got a chiropractor, they have got a yoga teacher, they have got a Pilates instructor, they've got a rehab guy, they've got a mindset guy. They've got a whole team around them to support them as they as they strengthen their game. And it's the same thing for people. Like if you want to be at the top of your game, you have got to have a team around you. And I do pride myself on the fact that I don't work alone. I'm really lucky that I've got the medical doctor. I have got 2 nutritional therapists in England and 2 also in the US. And so one's in Colorado, one's in San Francisco, and then Nathan is in the UK, and he oversees, I run most things past him. I don't like working unsupervised in that way, because this is people's health. It's really important to me. And I want to make sure that I'm not giving people like the wrong guidance, like it's actually being vetted and approved by someone who has a ton, like 25 years of clinical experience. I have a lot of personal experience and clinical experience, but I really do like having the oversight of somebody else who has worked in hospitals, emergency rooms, all the things, and is now on this other trajectory because he realized that model of medicine was not sustainable. It was not helping people get well. And we're all very committed to helping people perform at the top of their game. So having a team is so important.
So if you want access to Raewyn and all of her incredible professionals on her team, check her out. We'll put all those links in the show notes. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Hey, Ray here again. Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, please subscribe and rate us in your favorite podcasting platform. Want to be a guest on the show or know someone who has an amazing story of entrepreneurship? Apply on our website at chironconsulting.us/podcast.